What's up guys, VeechCommon here, and welcome to the next episode where I'm going to be showing you guys how to make your very own 3D Pokemon card like I have right here. I think this Croconaw turned out very cool and I'm super pleased with the results. As you guys can see, it's made up of many layers of Pokemon cards all stacked up together, which gives it this really cool depth effect. So without further ado, if you guys want to learn how to make Pokemon cards just like this, let's get into the video. So the first thing you guys want to do is grab your entire collection of Pokemon cards. And as you guys are about to see, I've definitely got no shortage. Now, I know it may be hard choosing a card when you have so many options. However, I want you guys to remember that simpler is always better, especially for your first time. Even something as simple as this fleshing right here is perfect. As you can see, it's nothing but the Pokemon in the background. Even this Pikachu right here would be absolutely a great choice, minimizing the tough cuts. When choosing your card, you want to make sure you have at least 5 copies of it. You could probably get away with 4, but more is always better. This way you can have multiple layers of depth, and you won't have to worry if you make a mistake like I did for my first time. One more thing you want to look out for is having the Pokemon touch the border. This just makes the whole process a lot easier so that you don't have to cut the entire Pokemon out. Rather, you can just leave it attached to the border. Now, it's not necessary, but it just makes everything a lot easier. As you guys can see, all these cards are attached in some way. Even my Croconaw is attached to the top and the bottom. The card I'll be using for this video is this Rowlet right here. As you guys can see, I've got 5 copies of it, and it's a fairly simple card. Remembering that simpler is always better, just like this Pikachu right here. So getting right into the materials, you guys are going to want an X-Acto knife. This is going to be one of our most important tools, as it's what we'll be doing most of our cutting with. However, if you do not have an X-Acto knife, a pair of scissors could also work, but ideally you would want both an X-Acto knife and scissors. Next, you're going to want some glue. Liquid glue, a glue stick, any type of glue would work. However, I'm going to be using this super glue because it dries super quickly, and that's what I would recommend. You're also going to want some tape, a black pen or pencil, a thin or thick one would work. I've got a thick one right here, but I'll also be using a thin one. A ruler, this can be used to make straight cuts. And 2 to 3 spacer cards for every Pokemon card you're going to be using. These are just going to be used to create a lot more depth in your Pokemon card. It can just be regular Pokemon cards like this Fletchling right here. However, I'll be using code cards because I can't bring myself to destroy regular Pokemon cards. These are going to be used to create a lot more depth, like I said, as you guys can see. This is definitely not 5 Pokemon cards on this Croconaw, it's way more. And last, but definitely not least, you're going to want 5 of your chosen Pokemon card. Remember, 5 or more is ideal, but if you only have 4, 4 could potentially work. So to make it a little bit easier on you guys, I've put the screen up with all the materials you need. You can take a screenshot of it, or you can just keep this on the screen, collect all the materials, and come back to the video. The very first thing you guys want to do, after you've selected your card of course, is think about all the different layers in your card. So as you guys can see in my Croconaw, we've got some sky all the way in the back. We've got some grasses in the back as well. We've got some grasses in the front. We've got our Pokemon himself. And then we've got that water at the bottom. So you don't have to do anything, just take a mental note of all the different parts of your card you see. Taking a look at our Rowlet, which is going to be the card I use in this video, we can see that all the way in the back we've got some black darkness, which is going to be our background. We've got some trees in the very front. We've also got some trees in the back. We've got these leaves that are at the very, very front of our card. And then we've got our Pokemon, which is Rowlet, sitting on top of that log. Now, when establishing our different layers, I like to work from front to back, but you can also work from back to front if you'd like. It doesn't really matter. The only thing that really matters is that you've got enough cards for your layers, with your first card being what's at the very front, and your last card being what's at the very back. So as you guys can see, I've got 5 different layers here, which means I have to have 5 copies of Rowlet. So all we're going to do is grab a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil in order to organize our ideas we just had about the different layers and simply transfer them onto a sheet of paper. By writing down each of the layers we want each card to be, It'll minimize mistakes and make it a lot easier to know which cards to cut in the future. So spreading our 5 cards across our piece of paper, we're going to take our pen or our pencil and simply write down each of the layers. So at the very front, my first card, I want to be the leaves. My second card, which is going to be the second from the very front, right after the leaves, is going to be our Pokemon and the stump. The next card, which is our third farthest from the front, is going to be our first trees. Right after that is going to be our second trees, which are the trees that are a little bit farther back in the background. And finally, our final card, which is all the way in the back, is going to be that background or that darkness which is behind the last trees. So once you finish with all your layers, making sure it's all the ones that you wanted, you can simply put your piece of paper to the side, somewhere where you can reach it because we will be referring to it often. I would also recommend pulling out a cutting board or something that you can cut on so that you don't go ahead and ruin your desk. So to start off our cutting, we are going to start off with the 2 easiest cards, which are going to stay the same in every single project, no matter which Pokemon you're doing. So our last card, which is our background card, this card we're going to do nothing to. It's going to stay exactly how it is, so you can just put it to the side, leave it, and forget about it until later on. Our first card, which is going to be our leaves, this card we're going to cut the entire picture out of, so it's just going to be the rim. This rim is going to be at the very front of our card, so make sure you make a nice cut. As you guys can see with this Croconaw, there is a border kind of around it, and that's what this card is going to be used for. So we're simply going to take our very first card and we're going to cut the entire picture out of it, making sure that we do not throw away the picture because you are going to need it later. So now that you've cut the picture out of your Pokemon card, just like I have, you're going to take it and put it right back where it belongs on our organizer because we will be using this card later. Okay, so now we've put aside the 2 easiest steps, which are going to be the same in every single project, we're going to get into the cutting, which is going to vary a bit depending on your Pokemon card and depending how many layers you have. It's a very simple formula, and the way it's going to work is that you're always going to be cutting out what came before your card. So our last card, which is the background, stays the same, but for the one after that, we're going to cut out the background. For the one after that, we're going to cut out the background and the second trees. For the one after that one, we're going to cut out the background, second trees, and the first trees. This is going to keep continuing until we've reached our last card. You don't have to worry at all if this sounds a bit confusing. It's going to start making a lot more sense once we start cutting and once you see how the process starts to work. So now we're officially going to start the cutting. As I said, the background's going to stay the same. And for our next card, which is our layer with the second trees, we're going to be cutting the background out of it. So simply take your card for the second trees, put it to the side, and let's begin the cutting. So all I'm doing now is cutting out my background. For you, it might be a sky, but for me, it is that darkness. So as you guys can see, the background is now fully cut out of my card. And when we take that card that we kept the same, which is ultimately going to be our background, and put this one over top of it, we can see the background through it, which means we are on the right track. As you guys can see with my Croconaw, if you look very hardly in the back, you can see the sky, which is what we're going for here. So this next step, which I like to do after every time I cut, is optional, but if you'd like, as you guys can see a little bit of white where we cut, so you can just take your marker and kind of outline it to turn that white into black, which makes it a lot harder to see, and ultimately makes your card look a lot cleaner in my opinion. So I'm simply taking my Sharpie, and I'm just going to outline everywhere I cut, so that I can kind of color in that white, and as you guys can see, when I put this card over top, it's a lot harder to see that white, and I think it looks a lot better. So now we're going to take our card, which we are officially done cutting, and put it back on our organizer to use later, along with our background card, which we of course did nothing to, but I just used to show you guys how it looked. So according to our formula of cutting out everything that comes before our card, we cut the background out of the second card, and now for our third one, we're going to cut the background and the second trees out of it because that's all the stuff that comes before it. So I'm going to pull our third card off the organizer, and now we're going to cut out the background and the second trees from it, just like we did before, following our cutting again with the optional step of outlining it in black Sharpie. Now that I've completely cut out both the background and the second trees out of this card, when we take all three of our completed cards, which is the background we did nothing to, and the card we cut out the background out of, and we put all of them on top of each other, we can really see that 3D effect starting to come together, and I think it's starting to look really great. Continuing on with our formula of cutting out everything that comes before our card, we are now going to be cutting out the background, the second trees, and the first trees, essentially everything that comes before our fourth card, which is our Pokemon and the log. Just like before, we are now done our card. We've cut out the background, the second trees, and the first trees. So taking all of our cards that were completed, putting them together, we can really now start to see this all starting to come together, starting to look really cool in 3D. So now we're going to continue moving on and get this finished. Now if we had an extra card, maybe 6 instead of 5, that would be great, but because we don't, and we just had this little picture that we cut out of our border, we're going to need to find a way to make it just like all the other cards attached to the border. So as you guys can see, on this card, the leaves are all attached to the border, but on our little picture, they're not. So we obviously need to find a way to make it just like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create our own border. And if you guys have an extra card, you can just continue as before. But if you don't, we're going to take one of our spacer cards, we're going to cut out the little picture frame. This is going to make it the exact same dimensions as the card that we cut the picture out of originally. Sorry for the weird cut, but all I've done is simply cut out the leaves out of this picture. I just had to do it off camera because I had to be very precise, making sure that I got all those tiny little cuts. Now all we're going to do is take our leaves, and using our picture, we're going to put them back onto the border and then simply tape them or glue them on so that they're exactly where they should be. Again, if you guys have another card, you didn't have to use this rim, all you can do is simply cut out your last layer like before. Remembering that just like every other card, all we did was cut out all the layers that came before it. So now that we've completed every single one of our layers and cut everything out, we can take them and stack them on top of each other to really get a sense of what our final card is going to look like. Of course, we're still not done. Taking a look at my Croconaw here, you guys can see there's a lot more depth in the Croconaw than there is in the Rowlet, and that's because we still need to put all the spacer cards in between to really give that depth. So now we're going to take our spacer cards, remembering to have about 2 to 3 for every card you have, and that they can be either Pokemon cards or code cards like I've done. Code cards are going to be a little bit more work though, so just be mindful of that. Now all we're going to do is cut out the picture of each card, making them just like the border we cut out at the beginning. These are going to be used to stack under each layer, just like my Croconaut here, to give it a lot more depth. So if you're using code cards, you're just going to have that extra step of having to draw out the rim, but nevertheless, all you're going to do is repeat this step until you've completed all your Spacer cards and all of them have no pictures. So once you guys have completed that step about 50 million times, it was definitely tedious, I'm not going to lie. You're going to have all your Spacer cards, and now we can put them underneath each of our layers, remembering to put 2 or 3, and we can really get a sense, well actually not a sense, we can see exactly how our card's going to look when it's finished before we even start gluing. Now when gluing, you guys are going to see me go extremely quickly, and that is because I'm using super glue, which dries extremely fast. But if you're using a regular liquid glue or glue stick, you're going to want to go a lot slower, letting each layer dry when you glue it, so that you do not ruin your card. Now if you guys want, you can use a piece of tape just like me. I'm just doing this to help align my cards so that they're not slanted. However, when you're done gluing, you will need to take off a piece of tape so that one side is not higher than the other. But all we're going to do is simply take each of our cards and glue them together so that we have one big Pokemon card sandwich. So there we have it, we are finally done. Thank you guys so much for sticking along with me on this journey. I think these cards turned out absolutely amazing. I think it looks so cool. It's going to look so cool and unique, framed, on display, anywhere. I honestly think this thing would look great in anyone's hands. And now I have a Rowlet and a Croconaut to show off. So thank you guys so much for watching this episode where I showed you how to make your very own 3D Pokemon cards like I have right here. If you guys have any comments or questions, do not be afraid to leave them in the comment section below. I'll definitely answer them, and stay tuned for the next episode.